Hello everyone, welcome to my session working with Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage account. My name is Adewale Yusuf. So just a brief introduction of myself. My name is Adewale Yusuf. I'm the team lead of business intelligence analyst and trainer at D Brown Consulting. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I also lead the Nigeria Power Platform or your user group. I'm also an international business communication standard certified trainer. Microsoft most valuable professional as well, and you can connect with me on Twitter on at Adewale Analyst, on LinkedIn Adewale Yusuf, and on YouTube as well. My YouTube channel is Analytic Extra. So today we'll be talking about Azure Storage Gen 2. This is our agenda for today. We'll start with talking about what is Azure Data Lake Storage. We also talk about data platform in Azure. We also talk about the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, which is probably the one we want to talk about itself. I'll also show you some demo about the storage account, how you can set up your storage account, how you can set up a Gen 2 Azure Data Lake Storage, and then how you can input some data in there. We can also talk about how we can connect to this data set from Power BI and how Power BI can actually connect to the data we've actually structured on our Data Lake Gen 2. So these are the things we'll be talking about in our agenda. So first of all, I'll talk about what is a data lake storage. And when you hear data lake storage, what do you think data lake storage mean? Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 is a set of capability dedicated to big data analytics, right? And it's built on Azure Blob Storage. So it's built on Azure Blob Storage. So this particular storage is dedicated to big data analytics, like I said. So when you have a lot of data you're putting together and you're making them structured in a place. For example, you have a data lake storage Gen 2. It provides a file system like a semantic and also file level security and scale. So because of this capability are built on block storage, we also get a low cost and tight storage with maybe high availability and disaster recovery capabilities. So it's built on blob storage. You can put in any files, any interesting stuff, and that. And that's just a simple definition of what data lake storage is. Now, to talk about Azure Data Lake and storage account, it's actually a general purpose storage. So it allows you to store different kind of things, and you can start from maybe ingests in a native format. You prepare, you clean, you enrich, and annotate your semantic. You store. So when you store, right, you can store different kind of things, just like what you can see on my screen. You can store maybe something on devices, social media, LOB application. You can even store videos, web sensors, relational clickstream, right? So we call it a general purpose storage account, and it also allows you to do something like a batch queries, interactive queries, real-time analytics, machine learning, and data warehouse. Right, so it's a general purpose storage account. You can store media, any kind of things that you think of. Just know you can store it right there on your Azure Data Lake storage account. Now, when we talk about data platform in Azure, right, data platform in Azure is kind of simple and easy, especially when you are learning about Azure for the first time. You should know that this thing is not skyrocket and it's not even something very hard. It's just simple. You just need to understand how this works, right? So data platform in Azure work in such a way that I have a log files and a media and structure file, and I also have maybe a structure file, or I have a business or a custom app, right? So I can ingest that into my Azure Synapse Analytics pipeline, right? Just ingest that into my Azure Synapse. After injecting that into my Synapse, then I can also do something like putting that into my Azure Data Lake storage, right? Which is storing it. So after ingesting this into my Synapse, I can now store it. So this is like talking about data platform in Azure. So I can now store this data. Then after storing this data, on my data lake storage Gen 2, I can now do something called preparation. So prepare and train my data. So this is like a machine learning. So I'm preparing and I'm training my data. All right, and I can do that on Azure Synapse Analytics using Apache Spark. Then after that, I can also do a polybase or switch that to SQL on Azure Synapse Analytics, Synapse SQL. So to model and also save, right? To model and save. Then after model and save, I can push that to Azure Analytics servers to do my data warehousing, data modeling and mapping. Then I can ingest that into Power BI. Put that into Power BI. So that's basically the process of and the trend of how data platform works in Azure. It's kind of simple like that. So it's really not something hard. You start from a raw file, from a raw data, put that into a storage. Then from the storage, you train and model your data correctly, do an ETL, you extract, you transform and load it. Then you push that into Power BI for further analysis. Now let's talk about Azure Data Lake Gen 2 itself, right? So Azure Data Lake Gen 2 is kind of interesting because the structure is different from the Data Lake Gen 1. So for those that are familiar with the Gen 1, there's just a slight difference between Gen 1 and Gen 2. So for Gen 2 is stored in something called container, right? So you put a container there, and inside your container you can have different folders and even files. I can have files, I can have folders inside my container, right? So inside this container, I have different folders and I can structure different files there. But the interesting thing about Azure Data Lake Gen 2 is that you can have more than one container. You can have different containers. You can have a lot of containers, and inside those containers, you can still have more folders and more files inside there. I can put more folders and more files inside those containers, right? I can put more folders and more files, structure my file inside there, however I want to structure it, and then I'll structure it that way. And that is how Data Lake Gen 2 work with different containers. Then inside my containers I have different folders there, then inside the folders I'm putting different files there. So just see this as a storage account. Just if you're new to this, it's not something hard. It's just like maybe you have a drawer in your house where you store some things, right? It's just a storage account. Now, what are the features of Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2? So you need to understand that this has an add-up compatibility, right? It has a POC6 permission. The cost is very effective, right? It's not that expensive. Optimized drivers, asset steering, lifecycle management policies, and this can also connect to some other third-party stuff, third-party app. And just like I said, this is built on blob storage, so you can store anything, and it can also connect to other third-party apps like Databricks and the likes. And those are the features of Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So just like I said, that Data Lake Gen 2 is built on blob storage, and it enhances these three basic things. Number one is performance, right? So it optimizes because you do not need to copy or transform data as a prerequisite for analysis compared to the flat name space of blob storage. The hierarchical namespace greatly improve the performance of directly management operations, which improve overall job performance. So this can actually improve your performance because it's built on the blob storage, right? So compared to blob storage, which you have to store names in hierarchical, so this one you can actually you do not need to do copy or transform data as a prerequisite for analysis. You can store your data anyhow you like, and this makes this very fast, and the performance is very great, right? This is one of the beautiful advantage of Data Lake Gen 2, and that's performance, right? Now, management is the second one. Management is easier because you can organize and manipulate files through directories and subdirectories. I can manage my files the way I want. I can manage it through directory and subdirectory, and then I can easily manage the file in such a way that it will be easy to even work with in the first place. And the third advantage is the security. In fact, this is what I love most about Gen 2. Security is enforceable because you can define POSIX permission on directory or individual files to say, I want you to have access to this particular individual files. I want you to have access to this group of files. Or I want you to have access to this particular container. So I can easily put security on my storage, and then security can be assigned differently based on different permissions, right? So that is some of the advantage that you can get from using a data lake storage Gen 2. Now, let's move into a demo and show you some of the things you can actually do with Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So I'm going to go into my Azure portal. For those that are new to Azure, so you can go to Azure portal. So maybe you can go to portal.azure.com. Portal.azure.com. So if you want to try this on your own, you may set up a trial account. Azure has a free trial which you can actually set up, and then once you set up that, you can now get yourself on Azure portal and play around with different actions and functionalities. But the functionalities we want to use on Azure for this particular demo is the Azure storage account, right? That is the Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So to start with, you need to have a subscription. So you need to make sure you have a subscription. So for me, I'm using a subscription down below here. And then after you have a subscription, then you need to start creating your storage account now. So to create my storage account, I'll go to this search. I can search for, let's just search for data lake storage maybe Gen 2. But you notice that typing data lake storage Gen 2, there's nothing like data lake storage Gen 2 here. It's not coming up, right? Because I haven't provisioned it yet. And to provision that, you need to click on storage account, which is this one. Right? So it's from storage account that you can now create your data lake Gen 2 and provisions your storage account. So to do that, you see create button here. So I'll click on create. All right, so now that I click on create, my subscription is here. So you can select a resource group if you already have one, and if you did not, you can click on create just like I'm doing now and just put a resource group here. So storage, I can say storage demo. That's the name of my resource group. So once I put this here, then for my storage account name, I can put a name here. So let me call it storage 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 demo AB1 or AB2. Okay, so you can see that this field can only contain a lower letter than a number. So name must be between 3 and 24 characters. So that means I need to change this to a small cap, which is storage demo AB2. All right, I just put storage demo AB2. All right, so the region, you have to set these regions to particular locations that you have. So for me, I can leave it as the East US, and the performance is this standard performance you want to recommend for most scenario general purpose V2. So this two is extremely important. So when you see this standard, right, and you see V2 here, this is V2 simply means your storage Gen 2, and I have redundancy here. So this redundancy depends on um, maybe your pricing, the amount you think you are paying and all that. So you have to make sure you select the one that is suitable for your pockets. All right. Now I have let me go back to standard. All right. There's also premium here. So if you like to go for premium, but for me, I'm doing standard. So okay, so now let me go to advanced. Now, under my advanced, I have different things. I have the request security, I have enable bulk public access, I have minimum version. You have do on version 1.2, permitted storage, data lake Gen 2. Now, can you see data lake Gen 2 down here? Data lake Gen 2 storage hierarchy namespace, enable hierarchical namespace. So if you enable this, so that means you're enabling your data lake Gen 2. So if I switch this off, you notice that all my block storage is active. So if I do enable data lake, enable hierarchical namespace, so I know I'm enabling my Gen 2. All right. Now let's go to the next thing here, which is networking. So enable public access, enable. So once your network is on, and I go to data protection, look at data protection. That protection is also there. So from here, I can remove all this enabled, because if you actually enable this, your Gen 2 may not be feasible All right. So once I do this under description, I really do not have anything to do with descriptions, even tag, nothing really. Then I can come to review and curate. And then once I review and curate this, I'm just looking at, okay, validation field, click here to view details. Let me just check my details. Okay, my subscription is currently disabled. So let me just switch on my subscription. Okay, so right now I've clicked on create and it's currently deploying my um, um, Azure Data Lake Gen 2. I've clicked on create and it's deploying my Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So what should have in mind that this may take time. So deployment is in progress right now. This may take time and then we just have to wait a little bit for this to actually come up. So you can see deployment in progress. I've clicked on create and this is currently deploying. And let's just give it a little time, then we can continue from here. All right, so my deployment is complete, so I can click on go to resource now. So now my Azure Data Lake Gen 2 has been deployed, and this is what you can see on my screen here. You can see the name of that Gen 2, which is storage demo AB2. So you can see all the details here, and you can see the data lake storage, you can see the security under overview. Then under here I have the file system, I have the queuing services, I have the table services, and then um, I have different things here. All right, now I can start by creating different things that I want. Here I have the data lake, I have the upload option, which means if I want to upload to a blob storage, I can actually upload from here. And then I have containers. So containers, remember the the slides that shows you in PowerPoint, which shows that I can actually check different containers, and each containers we have different folders and different files under them. So this is exactly what we are going to simulate. So if you remember this particular slide here, these are different containers, and in these containers, yeah, the containers can have different folders. So and that's what we are trying to simulate. So I can come to containers here. This is my data storage, and these are all the things I can add. I can come to container and click on container just to add a container. Here I can call this one demo one. Um, um, okay, lowercase. So and just do demo one. And then this demo one, do I want to do a particular private access? Do I want a public access? Do I want different things? But I can just click on create here and I'm creating my container. So what I just did now is I just created a container, and this is one container that I've created. I can try to create another one if I want to. Let me say demo 2 and click create. So I just created two containers right now. Two containers, all right? Two containers. And here, this is what I just did. Container 1 and then container 2. Container 1 and container 2. Right, that's what I did. So I can double click on demo one to start putting more folders or files inside this container. So I can click on add directory to add like a folder to say demo folder. Let me just type inside demo folder, and I'll click save. Oh yeah, try something wrong. Okay, so look at this. So I've created a folder inside my container, and then if I were to simulate that to my explanation, so this is this folder here, and inside this folder I can actually add a file, or I can even add a file here. So let me open the folder and let's just add the file inside the folder. So upload is up here, so I can click on upload and go to my system to probably upload a file. So I'm going to upload a file from my system. So I have a file. Yeah, and let me just drop this PDF here called sales staff performance, and I'm going to click on upload. And my staff performance is uploading now. Yay, and my file has been successfully uploaded, right? And this is the file that I just uploaded, staff called staff performance. So inside is my file. Another thing I can do here is to add some things like permission. So just to manage the access. And when I right click on the file, you can see manage ACL here. So if I click on that, I can actually manage access to some people I want to give permissions to this particular file. You know, we talk about performance and security and management when we are explaining Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So I can actually add a permission for how I want people to actually have access to this file here, and I can as well add a principal here. So when I add a principal, so which means I want a particular person to have access to this particular file, and I'm giving this particular person different access, right? So let me just discard this as I don't want to do that now. I'm just showing you this. All right, so back to my container. I'm on demo one, and inside demo one, I created a folder called demo folder, and inside this folder, I added a file called staff performance. All right, so that is me just working on my Azure Blob Storage and looking at how I can actually access different demo. So let me go back to my storage container. So in the container, I've shown you how I can create a container, create a files. There's also something called storage browser. So in your storage browser, you can actually preview your container, blob container, even your tables and even your file sharing. So under my container here, if I click on container here, you still see all the container I created. You see them here, which I can also access this. I can decide to add more container from here or even upload a file from here. I can also create a table directly from here. So if I click on table, the same thing I can do here, I can click on table here and click on add table. So when I click on add table here, I can give it a table name and say table demo table. And okay, it has to be small cap, sorry. So demo table, and I click OK. And you can see that a table has been successfully created. So I can click on the table and start adding more entities. Entity simply means a column, right? So I can start adding more entities that I feel like I want to add inside this table. So if I click on add entity right here, add entity basically is going to allow me to add different property names and different entity names and the values, right? So which I can start adding. So add identify here, add identify here, add the properties, add different things. So the properties I want to add here, I can say name, and then here I made it a text string, and then this one is salary. I'm just creating a table, right? And I'm going to make a salary a integer, all right? And I'm going to add a date as another column, and this date I'm going to add I'm going to make it a date and time. Okay, so just this three column with my partition key and row key is fine. And I'm going to click insert. So once I click insert here, you can see that I've added more columns to this, and here I can start linking this table to anywhere that I want to add it to. So that's basically it, and then that's basically a lot of things you can do with Azure. But another thing I would also like to show us is how you can actually integrate this to your Power BI. So since I have a blob, I have a container here on my demo one, and inside this container I have a folder, and this folder now has a file called star performance. Let me even click on the file so you see how the CSV file is going to show here. So you can see this CSV file from here. I can actually download it. I can look at the key, and I can also refresh this as well. So how do I connect Power BI desktop to this? If I want to connect Power BI to my Azure storage Gen 2. So there's two ways you can connect Power BI to this particular storage, which I'm going to show you now. Okay, so there are two ways I can connect with Power BI desktop. So I can go to get data and click on more from here. So once I click on more, it's going to give me the list of all the things I can connect Power BI desktop to. And right now, I would like to connect it directly to the Azure Data Lake Gen 2, right? Which is currently loading now. Right, interesting. So once I type Azure here, I can see all the connections related to Azure. And the one I would like to connect to is the Data Lake Gen 2, which is this one. You can see Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So even if I type, let me just type Data Lake here, you will see, sorry, Azure Data Lake. All right. So I have all the Azure connector here, and I have the Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So I'm going to click on this Azure Data Lake Gen 2, and I'll click on connect. Now it's going to ask me for something, and let's see. Okay, so now it's asking me for the URL to connect to that Azure Data Lake. So, and it's asking which one do I want. Do you want a file system or you want a CDM folder view, which is on beta? So, to get the URL, I'll go back to my Azure Data Lake here, and then remember I can go back to overview. So I need the URL here. So the overview technically will not show the URL in full as I want to see it. So if this is not showing it in full, I can go down here to something called endpoints, right? Then under endpoint, I can come to Azure Data Lake storage. Can you see Data Lake storage? Then under Data Lake storage, I can copy the primary endpoint, which is the Data Lake story primary endpoint. That's the URL. I'll copy that and go back to my Power BI and paste that here. Then click on OK. Okay, so then once I click on OK, there are two ways to connect. I can either sign into these two authentication with the email address and password I used there. I can also use an account key. But in order to save us the stress, let me just use the account key. So I can go to my account access key here. Then under my access key, my account key should be here, which is this one actually, this key here. That is my key. So I can just copy this key and then go to my Power BI and paste this key here and click on connect. Okay, so right now you can see the CSV file that I drop inside that my Azure Blob storage. You can see that CSV file here. I can click on transform and this to go to Power Query just to expand the file. Okay, so my Power Query file is coming up. All right, so this is the Power Query, and then inside here I have the staff performance here, so which is what I want, and I have the binary here. So I'm just going to click the binary for the staff performance content, and it's going to bring out the staff performance file for me, which is the actual files that I would like to see. Okay, so this is it, and I have my staff performance table right now, I can now start using in Power BI to create any other thing I want to create. So I mentioned there's another way I can connect Power BI to this. So it's using the Azure Blob Storage. So I'm going to click on more, and then this time we're using Blob Storage instead, not just the Azure Data Lake Gen 2. So here I'm going to come to Azure, and then under Azure, I'll look at the Azure Blob Storage. So this is the one that I want now, Azure Blob Storage, and I'm going to click on Connect. So right now the blob storage is asking for account name or URL. So I can go back to my Gen 2, and then here I'm going to go back to my endpoint. But this endpoint actually, remember the other time I used the primary endpoint from data log story, but this time I'm just going to pick only the name, right? Just the name of the name of my blob storage, right? And I can go to my overview page just to pick that, since what I want is to name just the name. Right, so I'll copy that from here, and that is my resource group name. So I'm going to copy it in. Oh, sorry, this is a resource group name. I actually need the name of the storage itself. So let me just go to access key. I should be able to get that from access key. And then from my access key area, I have the storage name here. So I can just copy. I can type actually if I want to, but I just prefer to always copy. So I can copy this and then go to my Power BI, paste it here and click on OK. Okay, so now you can see this is also asking for access key, but we've lost the connections to our OA2H authentication here. That's because storage does not allow that. It only allows the key. So I'll go back to my Azure and then copy the key from here. Just copy the key and go back to my Power BI and then paste the key and click on connect. Okay, it's connecting right now. Okay, and then here I have all my container, right? I can see all of them here. So when you click this one, you should have everything you have inside there. So here I have a folder and I have a staff performance. Under my demo 2, I really did not have anything, so it's kind of empty. So let me go to table 1. I'm just demo 1, which is my first container, and just click on transform. Okay, so my Power Query editor is coming up. Okay, so once I click on transform, it's kind of here, and what I need is this one. So I'm just going to click on the binary for staff performance just to show me the staff performance, which is the actual file that I want. And this is it here. I've been able to see this. So thank you so much for joining my session. So this is just what I'm going to show you in Azure Data Lake Gen 2 today. And thank you so much for joining my session. You can connect with me on Twitter at Adewale Analyst, on LinkedIn Adewale Yusuf, and you can watch more on my YouTube channel. Go to Analytic Extra. So thank you so much for joining. So you can put your questions and all your observations in the comment sections. Thank you.